Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm swell. How about you? Wellness is important.
It is. I'm moderately swell, I guess. I don't know. So, we did have something we wanted to talk about. Something that neither one of us knows a friggin' thing about.
That's right, because I was asking what 3,000 Years of Longing even was.
Yes, and I said, Idris Elba plays a genie. And Shanna just looked at me blankly, and I said, well, not like Will Smith played a genie in Aladdin. Not that kind of genie.
So
and Tilda Swinton is in a...
How have I not seen a preview for this?
I don't know, because even I've seen it, and I'm culturally illiterate.
It's because I don't watch commercials. That's why.
I
haven't watched anything with a commercial in quite a long time, actually. Because if I watch something with commercials with my spouse, he's like, "Oh, what year is this? Why are we watching this?"
Every once in a while, like if I have a few minutes and I'm bored and I don't want to do anything actually productive, I'll pull up movie trailers on my PC and just sit there and watch. And I'll be like, where the hell did that come from?
Right?
Because I don't know.
I basically, when I look and I'm like, I'm in the mood to go to a movie. Let's see what came out, what's out at theaters. Then I look through and watch the trailers on the website, maybe, if I don't know what it is. It's funny, though, because I used to, first of all, grew up in movie theaters. Yeah. Then my first job, my first official paid over the table, was at a movie theater. And it's where I met my husband. It's what I did for years and years and years, because then I was managing them. Mm-hmm. And so I used to know, like as a teenager, I knew what was on when on TV, and I knew what was coming out in theaters and what it was about and who was in it and all of that. And I could tell anybody, they're like, what's coming out next week? And I could be like, here's what's releasing next week. And now I'm like, what even is that movie? But Idris Elba is also in like a killer creature feature.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah,
I think it's called The Creature.
Me to see, probably.
Maybe. Or The Beast.
I was just...
The Beast, The Creature. Yeah. It's a vague, unspecific...
Creature?
Yes.
It's not like The Ghost and the Darkness. I haven't watched that in a long time.
Is that the one with Michael Douglas? No, Martin Sheen?
No.
What's the ghost?
I feel like you were right the first time in Val Kilmer.
No, different movie.
Two Killer Lions.
I'm thinking of the one where... It is Martin Sheen. He goes to Haiti and it's zombie and voodoo and...
Oh, I see. I know what that one is,
yes.
But I don't remember what it's called. I watched that as a teenager and I was all, he's hot. I was already into his son, so why not? Why not? I like his voice. And Emilio Estevez, they have a husky kind of voice, like a...
And he had very 80s hair in that for a man his age. He didn't have like... 18-year-old. It kind of stood up in the front.
Yeah.
And it was funny because that was around the first time I got my hair cut short. And I woke up and my hair was all kind of wild. And I looked in the mirror and I went, I have Martin Sheen hair. And that's what I say if I get up and it's sticking up. I don't have much hair to stick up now, but nobody else.
It's Martin Sheen hair.
Nobody else looks at me and goes, my God, you look like Martin Sheen today.
I feel like if I remember that someday I need to, when you come in, be like, you have Martin Sheen hair today. Except your hair is always, it's not like it's messy when you come over here. Mine, on the other hand, is whatever weird cloud of hair it's decided to be that day. So
that's why I keep it cut short.
My hair is a sentient creature. Hell, even when it's short, it's a sentient creature. But it's naturally curly and fine. Not a great combination. So...
It's fun. It's challenging.
It's challenging. Yeah.
It's a new adventure.
Plus somebody was like, well, what's wrong with your hair? And I was like, man, you don't want the answer to that. I have a complicated relationship with my hair. If I were a person who actually, was high maintenance enough to do it, it could look great all the time. Because technically I have good hair. But I don't. And I won't. And everybody's like, just put some mousse in it. And I'm all... First of all, I have sensory issues, and my hair has to feel like my hair. So I have like a neem oil already that goes in it because it doesn't change the texture of my hair. That's it. That's all that's going in there, people.
I wash it a couple of times a week, and that's a good week.
I didn't realize why it was so complicated. I wash it a few times a week as well. Is because my mom had stick straight hair. My dad was the one with the curly hair, and it was always short. I don't know what to do with my hair.
I was also unable to advise Lucy in any way. That's thing one.
Because she's got thick curly hair.
Very thick. She has more hair follicles per square inch than any 3 people put together.
It's true.
She has so much hair.
It's spectacular hair.
It is. And she has embraced the curl, which is good because so many people, I think,
it took me until my 40s to even try to embrace the curl, which is also why it is always on my brain. Because I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do with this. It was easier when I just brushed it out.
I did, though, when I first... So we have a mutual acquaintance who has... it's a man who has naturally curly hair. And I finally just asked him one day, this was years ago, how do you keep your hair looking so gorgeous? And he told me it was this book called Curly Girl, which is all about what to do and what not to do and what kind of stuff. Not like use Suave shampoo. It wasn't that specific, which no, that's not my...
But it's stuff like don't brush out your curl.
Yes, and do this and don't do it. So now it's, of course, it's online and she still follows Curly Girl, but...
Okay, interesting. I'll have to get that book. Ooh, I read Corey Feldman's biography.
How was it?
Choreography. It was really good. Because he's very open and he very much takes responsibility for the choices he's made, even though one can see, I mean, he lays it out. All right, well, here's what led up to this in like his life. He was very much abused. His mom was bipolar and in a very bad way. Untreated, undiagnosed, all of that stuff. And she would shut down into manic depressive episodes and weren't allowed to wake her up. And he got beat with a wooden dowel by her at one point, and he was hiding under his brother's crib, and she's just beating him underneath there. And like both his parents used drugs. So once he tried drugs for the first time, pretty easy, or his dad especially, I think, used drugs, but then there was a stash right there in the house. How handy dandy was that?
Yep.
But it was a lot of also it was very honest about Corey Haim too, because, the 2 Coreys. And I, of course, grew up watching the 2 Coreys because Feldman's only about 5 years older than I am. Like 4.5 or something like that. So he was always the one I found the most interesting anyway. Sorry, Corey Haim. Not trying to speak ill of the dead or anything. No. But Corey Feldman was the more interesting one to me. But he was inevitably tied to him for so long. And so it starts off with him getting the news that Haim is dead. And the entire world basically harassing him before he's even had time to process it. Because it's already on the news before he finds out. And people actually camping out on his lawn to try and talk to him about him. And, the people, his advertising person and all that coming over and being like, well, you have to release a statement now. And he's like, I don't want to release a statement now. I just found out he's dead.
Like a manager and a publicist.
Yeah, everything. Everybody was there, and they, 2 of them woke him up to tell him, first of all, that it had hit the news that he was dead. And then, and I had forgotten, here's the thing. Here's how well the press did at misinformation. So when everybody assumed it was drugs when he died, Corey Haim, that it was an overdose. And here's the problem. I remembered that it was an overdose because even after they showed that it was an enlarged heart and stuff like that killed him, and like pneumonia or something like that, and not a drug overdose.
It persisted.
Once that came out in the autopsy, the press continued to say it was an overdose because that's what was getting them the good news.
That was...
And it actually worked because I remembered overdose, which is sad. And so Feldman was like the only one. He went on Larry King, and before the autopsy came out, and he said, I'm telling you right now, it was not an overdose. He was getting clean because he had moved his mom into his apartment because she had breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And he was clean for her, So, and he was like, he didn't overdose. And Larry King said, all right, will you come back on the show after the autopsy, no matter what the results then? If you're wrong, you come on. If you're right, you come on. He said, sure. So, and yeah, then the autopsy came out and he was right. And nobody cared.
No, that's not a good story.
But yeah, it was one of those ones that's open and doesn't really tear anybody apart, but was really super honest.
Mm-hmm.
His relationship with Michael Jackson and that sort of thing, and how that friendship crumbled at the end because Jackson had gotten very paranoid at the end.
You can understand why.
Yes. But he was also, he just wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
Like mentally at that point. So, yeah. And just hearing about favorite movies being made. Gremlins and the Goonies and all that good stuff. So
maybe I'll put that on my list.
It's a quick read. But I feel like when he's just very honest about everything. And again, he lays it out and then he says, but I made that choice in the end. I chose to do heroin and I chose to do this and yada, yada, yada. So it was good. Good. It was like a nice little kickback to the 80s.
We talked about this a little bit a couple days ago. I introduced Thing 1 to Ally McBeal.
Oh, yes.
So I watched a little bit more of it last night.
How far are you in?
I'm just maybe halfway through season 1. It's Christmas time.
How fast is the dancing baby hit?
It hasn't hit yet.
Okay.
Because Lucy's just laughing her head off at some of the ridiculous visual effects, which I had forgotten that part of Ally McBeal. They're all over. There are all kinds of it. Like when she gets dumped, there's a picture of a garbage truck picking up a dumpster, and then she goes hurtling out of it.
Yeah.
And people's heads Elaine's head blowing up, and the guys staring at some woman and their tongues falling out of their mouths like cartoon. Now there was one I just watched one and I was like, wow, that's so not current. It's about a trans woman.
Oh.
Now I won't say it was treated disrespectfully because I think they did a good job for when it came out.
For the level of awareness and knowledge. And, yeah.
Yes. And I can't help coming back to Ally McBeal was a tit. Just a absolute, self-absorbed idiot.
Yeah.
She's not, I'm like, how did this woman become a lawyer?
Yeah, how did several of them get through even college, let alone?
Right? She's no Elle.
No, that's an actress.
No, the one
from Jesus Christ, the Reese.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
In
Legally Blonde.
Legally Blonde.
Elle.
My God, I feel like my brain cells are just like, fuck you, and jumping out of my ears
I feel like we're putting that on just display that our brains are broken today.
They're like, you're wondering how she
Let's start all these conversations and not know where we're going.
Not know anything.
Just forget everything.
That guy in the thing with the
Elle
stuff.
Woods.
Yes!
I did it.
Yay!
I should have been able to do it because we watched that recently. My daughter loves Reese Witherspoon is one of her new favorites because we watched Legally Blonde and she absolutely loved it.
I every time I watch it, I love it.
But it's perfect because Elle Woods is on the surface an idiot, but she's actually incredibly smart. And I've known those people who are common sense dumb, but intellectually,
and she's not
quite
even
bright.
In some ways, she's not. She's a little bit like the Cher in Clueless. If I can't come up with the name of that movie, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop.
Where they come across, and the whole point is, of course, touching on that whole dumb blonde.
Yes, and they're both very intelligent, but the focus of their intelligence has always been on, for Elle Woods, it's being part of the sorority. But while she's doing all that, and that's the image she maintains, she's still getting good grades. Yeah. She's still doing the work.
They're they're both insanely naive, however, to the way people work.
Yes. And they don't know much about how people without money work.
Indeed. That's very true. So, yeah, and I was like, well, what else can I have her watch that has Reese Witherspoon in it? Because whenever they get into an actor like My son got into Keanu Reeves, and that one was easy,
yes.
right? I'm like, here are a billion action flicks you can watch him in. But like Reese Witherspoon, a lot of drama, a lot of...
She's on a couple episodes of Friends.
Stuff that she's not going to care about, even though that's her fate. And then some inappropriate ones, like the one with Buffy. You may not have ever seen it. The Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Phillippe. There we go.
Yes.
I knew one of those would sound right eventually.
But what was this movie?
Oh, don't ask me the title today. Cruel Intentions.
Oh,
maybe.
One of those.
Selma Blair. Yeah. So that's not one I can watch with her, certainly, because it's sexually inappropriate and there's incest. And
Ew.
I think they're step siblings, but I don't remember. But still, they've like grown up together or whatever. So it's still incestual. But yeah, and Man in the Moon is like one of the first ones she did, and it's so sad.
I don't remember that.
And it's a little romance and drama. She was pretty young. I mean, she was, teenager.
Probably.
Well, since we can't remember anything, let's get started.
Yeah, because these facts we have written down.
Which is apparently what we require.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of starting a podcast or even just starting to research it, Buzzsprout is your go-to source for information and hosting. They have tons of videos and write-ups on everything you need to know about recording and distributing a podcast, and they even provide easy ways to get analytics on how your podcast is doing. We use Buzzsprout for our podcast hosting, and through them, we've been able to connect with tons of resources and distributors. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and helps support our show. A win-win. Not only do they help you get started, but they also do small things to encourage you, such as awarding you badges as you hit various milestones. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm doing the Delphi murders, also known as the Snapchat murders. Makes it sound kind of like a different thing than it is. Okay, kind of a disclaimer. The actual crime I'm going to cover isn't like more disturbing than in general other ones, but the details surrounding the case and the girls involved, that makes it stand out, and it has made it stand out for quite a while for me. It's deeply chilling, it's heartbreaking, and so here we go.
Yay!
And I'm not going to give any details because the thing is, no details have ever been released. There's a big media blackout on this case. On Monday, February 13th, 2017, so this one's not an old one.
Fairly recent for us.
Yes. 2 young girls had the day off school. Now, so they live in Indiana. They lived in Indiana. And what they did, they were like, it was a snow day, but it was not unseasonably warm out. And I'm like, excuse me? So I had to look. And so there, like here, we don't really we have some that are built in, but if you don't use them, you don't get them free back. Okay? Snow days. You don't get them back. They're just built in, and so we can miss this many days until we have to add days on to the end of summer.
Right.
So the way they handled it in their town, Delphi, Indiana, is they would have certain days set aside so that you would go that day if you had used up a certain amount of snow days, right? And if you didn't use up snow days, which they had not that year, then they got it off school. They got a random day off school.
Okay, what month was this?
February.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
It's February. They haven't really used them yet. I know here we get a lot of our snow in February and March, actually. So that's what we wait for, right?
Yes.
But in other places, normal places, they tend to have their winter days a little earlier.
Yes. And, okay, so it would be like a
so
teacher
they got a
work
free day off. Yes,
they had a day
because
off.
they hadn't used a snow day. So, yeah, I just had to look at, because I'm like, what do you mean it was a snow day and it was unseasonably warm?
Yeah, that doesn't go together.
Okay, so 13-year-old Abigail Williams, who's now, I will call her Abby from here on out, because I'm going to call them by the names they liked, and 14-year-old Liberty German, Libby, decided to go for a hike. Libby asked her big sister Kelsey to drive them to a nearby park that had trails and the Monon High Bridge, which is one of the tallest bridges in Indiana, and it's built across Deer Creek, and it's an old railroad trestle bridge. So if you've seen Stand By Me, you know what this bridge looks like. One of those big, tall bridges. It has gaps in it, and then you would walk across it.
I'm thinking there might be an urban legend about something that lives under that bridge.
Oh, possibly. Would be interesting to look at. It was about 1 p.m. when they were dropped off, with instructions to meet back there at 3 p.m. About 2:07 p.m., Libby posted a photo of Abby on the bridge to her Snapchat account, because they did. 2017, they had cell phones, right? How often do they have cell phones in the story when we're talking about it? Because they're usually older. So yeah, so she was being active on Snapchat at around 2 o'clock. She also posted just a black and white pretty image of the bridge by itself. Libby's dad showed up at 3, which had been agreed upon in the beginning, and the girls didn't show up, right? So he sat there for a bit. He tried calling her cell phone. After a while, he got out, and he starts walking around trying to find them. He asked people he passed if they'd seen the girls, but no one had. He called family of both girls in, and they joined him in the search, but they get to about 5:30. It's hitting dusk in February, and they call the police, right? It's like, okay, this isn't just them fucking off.
Right.
And these weren't kids who did that anyway, So the police figured the girls were just, okay, maybe they're lost somewhere in the park. We'll find them, no problem. Or maybe, because we're talking about teens here, and they always look at it, they're like, well, maybe they had a friend come and get them, and they're over at some friend's house, and they're fine. So they're not taking it fully seriously, so they didn't launch an Amber Alert right away or anything.
Right.
But they did launch a search party there in the park.
Okay.
And Sheriff Lazenby issued a statement. This was a very small town. Like, everybody knew what was going on at this point. So he issued a statement. There was no reason to believe the girls were in immediate danger. Everything's fine, but we're looking for Unfortunately, the search had to be called off at midnight when it got too cold. The temperatures had dropped.
Okay.
It's February.
Right.
So even an unseasonably warm day,
It's cold nights.
it's cold at night. The next day, the search continued early on, and a volunteer searcher found the bodies of 2 young girls.
Oh.
So while it hit the news that day that 2 bodies had been found, they would not be identified as Abby and Libby until the afternoon of the 15th, so 2 days later, after they first went to the park. They also stated their deaths were homicides at that time. They said this is clearly a homicide. It has never been said whether the girls had been sexually assaulted or not. It has not been said in what manner they were killed, what the weapon was. Zero information on this. Like, this police department has locked down information better than probably any other police department I have ever
because that's
heard of. But I will say the suspects they looked into later, investigated later, looks like that's a solid possibility.
Ugh.
So here come the details, because that could be story done, right? Here come the details that really make it stick with you. Okay. So the same day they announced the girls had been found, they released a photograph of a man who is clearly on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And he's somewhat overweight, wearing jeans, a dark blue jacket, a brown cap, and what looks to be a hoodie and a fanny pack or a long brown shirt that's sticking out under his jacket. It's kind of fuzzy.
Right.
It just in the years, so that's 5 years of smartphones coming along. Now you could take a picture with those puppies and it'd be crisp as hell.
Yeah.
But this one was clearly kind of taken. It's a little blurry. It's a little off balance. Like it was discreetly being taken. Okay? It's not somebody held up and posing for a photo.
Right.
This is somebody sneaking a photo of somebody. No other information was given, other than that police wanted to speak with the man and asking that anybody who recognized him come forward as they wanted to talk to him. A search warrant was issued on a home on the 16th. On the 19th, it was announced that the man in the photo was suspected of having been a party to the homicides of the 2 girls. So they finally say, okay, he's a suspect. February 22nd, an audio clip was released of a man saying something that sounded like "down the hill." Actually, I can play it.
Yeah.
So that's all they have. Down the hill. It's this short little snippet. And they're like, okay, does anybody recognize this voice?
It's really
hard.
It would be really hard, to pick it up from something that short, even if it was somebody you knew. Right. Because it wasn't distinctive. It didn't have a twang. It didn't have a...
That would help a suspect in the future, though, not having a twang. So there you go. It did help eliminate some people.
Yeah.
At the same time, a $41,000 reward was offered for information leading to a valid arrest. It would later be revealed that Libby had taken video on her phone and that both the still photo and the audio clip had been taken from this video. Or at least that's what it appears to be. some people were like, she took an audio clip of him and she took a picture of him and she took video. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it was all extracted from the video, but okay.
Yeah.
Who knows? The girls had known they were in danger. And that is the chilling part, is that they had known something was up with this guy, and Libby had discreetly recorded this guy as he approached them. Now, the tape, I saw a source that said that it's 45 seconds long, the recording of him.
Okay.
But other than that, I haven't seen how long the video actually is, and they have never, ever released the video, which, of course, there's conjecture on why. Is it because some of the violence that occurred was caught on the recording? And they never even released whether they found her cell phone there and got it from there, or whether it had been uploaded to the cloud. And they were able to access the files on the cloud.
And I have to wonder, I mean, kudos to her for having the presence of mind to try to record him, but what even would have triggered them to think
something was wrong?
Something was wrong.
Yeah.
Although I can totally see, because how old were these girls?
13 and 14. And one had just turned 14.
Okay, so I can totally see them goofing. And like, they see somebody walking, so they're like, oh, I'm going to record him. Just for shits and giggles.
Right. But the fact that they haven't released it says probably not.
Yeah, says there's something more.
And the thing is, she caught him saying their bodies were found. They had to go downhill from the bridge down to the river. So it's suspected so that's what they've got. So in March, the home of the man owning the property on which the girls were found. So this was a park system, right? But there were individual properties owned along it. So the owner of the home, 77-year-old Ron Logan, had violated his parole the day the girls disappeared by going outside his allowable area. I don't even think he was supposed to be driving. He'd gone to the dump. He'd taken a load to the dump. Then he'd gone to a bar, which was also a violation of his parole. A 2017 affidavit, which was leaked to the public via a podcast just this past spring, listed evidence indicating that the bodies had been staged, that the killer would have been covered in blood because it was a brutal crime scene, that the girls had not put up a struggle, and that the killer had taken items of the girls' clothing as trophies. It said that Logan had lied to the police and had asked his cousin the day after the crime to tell police, if they contacted him, that they had been together from about 2 p.m. at an aquarium. So he was setting up an alibi.
Right.
In addition, his cell phone was mapped in the area of the bridge and the creek where the bodies were found. Now, since people might be like, 77 years old, he was very healthy. He was in good shape. He was known to hike around that property. And when they interviewed him, he was interviewed on news and stuff like that, because of course they were on his property. And he said, this is very rugged terrain down here, which he was like, nobody could have carried the bodies out, first of all, because that's how rough it is. He said also nobody could have carried them down there, so they had to have made them go down there.
Okay.
And, stuff like that. So he talked about it being rough terrain. It was very common for hunters and stuff to be out there. And hikers, and that's it.
But there wouldn't have been hunters out in February.
No. Well, I don't know when hunting seasons are, but...
Generally fall.
Okay.
Because nothing's generally out to shoot at in the dead of winter. So,
tricky area. They had to get there by themselves, so they had to have been forced to walk down there on their own. There we go. It should be noted that previous charges against Logan did not include assault or pedophilia. So even though he was on parole and all of that, none of that, it was like driving related things, which is probably why I think he didn't have his license. And it was announced within days that he was not a suspect. But again, that affidavit didn't come out then with the information. That did not get leaked until 2022. Wow. Several suspects were brought in over the years with a focus on known pedophiles. News would hit the small town of Delphi that another suspect had been arrested, and people would get excited thinking the case was solved. And many, they'd post a picture and people oh my God, it looks just like the police sketch that was made from the video, right? And they're like, it's him. It's amazing how many of the suspects looked like the police sketch. And I will, of course, be posting the sketch. Right. And while the suspects listed sounded like good possibilities, after each investigation, police would later put out statements for each one that they were not suspects. Because they'd go into oh yes, one of them admitted to having slept with 13-year-old girls. He said it was, of course, it was
consensual.
mutual and consensual. And first of all, it can't be consensual, buddy, if they're 13.
If they're
That's not
13,
how that
no.
shit works. Gross. But then what happened, and of course, it was never released, why they were suspected and what alibis they had, and all that good stuff. The police would say, this person is not a suspect any longer. Because being a small town, there were incidents that led to police having to repeatedly ask citizens not to harass or go after persons of interest. Because every time a search warrant got served, for example, the whole town would know within, I don't know, an hour. The town had 3,000 people.
So they serve a warrant on John Smith's house. And
then everybody's like, John Smith is the killer.
Yep.
And then they'd start getting harassed or whatever.
Yep.
And they're like, we get that you are eager to help find these, who killed these girls. Because this was, again, small town. There weren't murders there. It's not how it worked. And now it was murder of 2 little girls. So, yes, they had to keep saying, thank you for your patience. Please don't harass these people. One of the men who would end up being a suspect was actually arrested in Woodland Park, Colorado. I feel like you're going to remember this. Because his Indiana plates were expired, he had a history of sexual impropriety and violence and had been arrested for threatening hikers with a hatchet or a machete. Do you remember when there were...
When was that?
Oh, God. Just like 2020 or 2021, I think.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, so there was somebody, I remember, because I read this and I was like, oh my God, I remember when that was, because I hike, right?
Right.
And so this guy was out there and he was just randomly threatening people and they didn't know at first who it was. And at the same time, a bicyclist got shot, which I think was separate while he was out on a trail. Was that the cyclist
who was killed?
Yeah.
They never have solved that, have they?
No, I don't think so. So I was like, man, this is such a side thing. But...
Wow. Okay, yeah, around the same time. And I think the suspicion was that the guy with the hatchet was the killer, but there's...
And he's never gone in trouble for that.
There wasn't anything linking his...
No, and because he'd never brandished a gun when he was threatening hikers. And wasn't that about the same time somebody had stretched like rope or line across trails so that bicyclists would run into it?
Yes.
Like there was all this crazy shit happening with hiking, and I think I was like, I'm going to take this year off.
I think that was before 2020, though.
Okay, and it might have been. Anytime between 2017.
I want to say it was like 2019, though.
Yeah.
Maybe 18 or 19.
So
somebody out there listening is going, oh,
Jesus Christ.
Look at a paper. No, I read the paper. I just don't remember what
I did. I just didn't write down when it happened. Now, his name was Daniel Nations. I might as well say his name because...
Right.
I've described his crimes, and you just have to look up hikers and hatchet and find out what it is. So he had moved to Colorado only a few months after the deaths of the 2 girls. And as with the others, he was ultimately released from suspicion. Colorado contacted... Indiana looked at it and everything, and they were like, no, there was stuff like he didn't have a car when it happened that day because his wife was like at a gyno appointment an OB appointment for an ultrasound because she was pregnant.
Oh, Lord.
And she was like, the thing is, she was very honest. Like when I was reading stuff, because they're asking her questions like, was he with you? And this, of course, was years before. And she's like, I think he was at the ultrasound with me, but she said, I cannot tell you that concretely. Like, I don't remember for sure, but we only had one vehicle, so he wouldn't have had a vehicle.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he did not do it. Just making that clear so that we don't, since I threw his name out there, but I feel like it would have been really obvious if I did it. Then on April 22nd, 2019, with people calling for the full video to be released to the public.
Right.
Police released a small portion of the video in which this time it was clear the guy said, guys, down the hill. So guys was added to it. Down the hill.
So they added another, 1.5 seconds?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, because it had only been released as audio clips before.
Right.
And then a still photo. So now it's like the video, but it's like, okay. But they also released a completely different police sketch, saying this sketch was the likely killer, and changed their age estimate from 40 or 50 to between 18 and 40. Of importance is the fact that this sketch had been done within days of the murder, but not released until 2 years later.
Why?
And the sketch was conveyed by an eyewitness. Right. Here's the thing about this case. The chilling part, of course, being the girls knew something was wrong.
Right.
And recorded their killer.
Right.
And the rest of it being that the sheriff's department and all the other, they've worked with a ton of departments, right? Shut down. Just, here's the barest information, this is it. Because they're saying that they have to keep the rest of it for when they get the person so that they can be convicted, and they cannot release too much information. But it's just fascinating to me.
But to release,
because there's usually at least somewhat more information. I'm like, my God, how distinctive was what he did that they cannot release any more information?
And how could they have released a sketch that was wrong when they how could they release an incorrect police sketch when they had a correct one?
I don't know.
That's so wrong. It just feels so wrong.
And every time people are still, of course, this person looks just like this person. Like, you'd see somebody get convicted, they show up on the news, and then there'd be a flood of calls to the tip line saying he looks just like the sketch. And they're like, okay, but we're not looking at that sketch anymore. Different sketch. Now, again, when I post the picture, the still and the sketches and all of that, it's really a different sketch. And it has hair. Versus, because he's wearing a cap in the photo,
right?
He has curly hair in the other sketch. Like, so somebody saw a person with their hat off, and that, so yes. And of course, we know nothing about what the eyewitness was an eyewitness to.
Right.
Because it is a public park, and there would have been all kinds of people walking around it. So how did they know? Yeah.
Although, small town, there probably weren't that many people. If it was a work day.
They did say that though it was a small town, it was in close connection with a bunch of other cities and that like little satellites and everything around there. And they said there were a lot of people who might have come to this park that weren't just from Delphi.
Okay.
Basically is what I ended up, because I was looking further into that. Like, okay, because at first it was kind of like, no, he's not a local. And, well, yeah, he is probably if he's out there hiking. Yeah. This isn't like Garden of the Gods where there's a billion tourists.
Right.
This was not that type of area. So hunters came there, sure. But that's it. But then later they're like, okay, he's most likely a local and he's in plain sight. So somebody out there has to know, and we're begging you, if it's somebody you know, that you tell us and quit covering for them. So, quick note, Ron Logan, the person who owned that property, the 77-year-old, died in January 2020. Fast forward to spring 2022. This year, along came another suspect. This one, now I've chosen purposely not to name the other suspects because, police have said it's not them. This one, Keegan Klein, lived on a property near where the girls' bodies were found. So he actually was right there as well. He was abutting Ron Logan's land, right? And the river in his area was searched in August. We're talking a month ago, and just over a month ago once this airs, that there were police seen searching down on it. There's a picture, and some of them have like a scuba mask on, kind of so they could be looking. There's a guy down on his hands and knees clearly digging for something. They've got like metal detectors, so they're searching this river adjacent to Klein's property.
What do they think they're gonna find
after 5 years later? Well, if it was a metal weapon, they'll stay. If it's heavy enough weapon.
If it's heavy enough, of course.
A crowbar would stay.
I don't know how big the river is, so I'm just thinking 5 years of spring.
It's not like big and deep because although, here's the thing. All I can see from the pictures is they're nearish the bank, right?
Okay.
So the deepest anybody is like up to his, what was it? Probably around his knees or so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking 5 years of spring floods have come and gone.
So, yeah, that's the thing. Big, but that's why I was like, so how heavy is this weapon that they think might have been there? Klein was arrested last year for child exploitation and child pornography. And amongst the files leaked to a podcast called Murder Sheets was proof that he was known to have spoken to the girls shortly before their deaths, as evidenced by his Instagram account.
Oh.
He was a fisher. Okay, so he was catfishing young girls.
Okay.
It showed pictures of a young attractive man. It's actually a known model. They know who the model is, so they knew it wasn't him. And that was, all these photos have been taken from that model's account.
Okay.
And then used on this account.
Right.
And he had scheduled a meetup with the girls at the bridge. So here's the thing. That's when they might have known something was wrong. because they were expecting to meet this young man,
Right.
by the way, because his picture's way younger, right? This young man there, and here comes this guy who, again, slightly overweight. They estimated his weight at 180 to 220 pounds and his height 5'6" to 5'10".
Okay.
He doesn't look 5'10" to me. So, but it could just be, I don't know. He's kind of shortish and kind of heavy-ish, right? But
Yeah.
So, and then this guy, who knows? Does he call out and say, well, it's me? And that profile name was Anthony _ Shots. So Anthony, right?
Okay.
And they're like, you're not Anthony. So maybe that's when they were like, oh shit, we're in trouble. I mean, we're never going to know.
Anthony's over here. He sent me to get you.
Something like that. And they were like, something is up.
Yeah.
And then they started recording him, right? So anyway, his IG account, Anthony Shots, showed he was catfishing young girls to get them to send him nude photos. Libby's conversations with him show she was interested in him. So they had been talking. It was
Right.
Libby. It has not been stated whether she had sent him any photos. And the Murder Sheets podcast has stated they redacted information from the leaked files after speaking with police and before releasing the information. So they did contact the police and say, people want more information. And the police said, at least keep these parts quiet. And they did. They have,
That's
right?
very responsible.
That affidavit, it was them also that then
Okay.
put that affidavit out there. And people can go view that.
Okay.
So, also of note, he was found to have searched online for how long does DNA last. And he failed a lie detector test, but again, I really don't put much
Right.
stock in that these days. However, he also apparently shared the password to his fictitious account with others, and it was used on multiple forms of social media. They said at the very least he was on Snapchat
right.
and Instagram under that profile, and that other people were using it. So he's, of course, maintaining he did not go to meet up with the girls. And it's like, really, you catfished him and decided not to show up?
Yeah.
But if other people were using his account, that really does put some doubt on it. Because
Yes, it
anybody
does.
could have known they were meeting at the bridge. So police did question him back in 2017. He was on their radar and he was released as a suspect at that time. But again, this year, they're suddenly looking very heavily at him and his family's property.
Okay.
Because he's only 28. So he would have been younger. But they have changed it to he could have been 18 and above.
Right.
What I do know is they have had increasingly ballsy press conferences and statements in the last year in which they have straight up said, we know who you are and we're coming for you. And one Indiana State Patrol officer ended his statements with, sleep well. So it sounds like maybe they've found something that will finally possibly break the case, but how often does that happen? You also still have to get that past the DA.
Yep.
And, you know, all of that. So
You have to have all the supporting evidence lined up.
yes, because they do not want this guy to get away.
Right.
The offered reward now has swelled to $250,000
Wow.
thanks to various donations, including a Colts player who kicked in money. And his was like $50,000 all on its own. Tips can be emailed to Abby and Libby Tip at cacoshrf.com or called into 765-822-3535 if anybody knows anything. My sources are Medium, All It's Interesting, Journal and Courier, WRTV News, and Unresolved. And
Can we put that on the Facebook page?
yes, and I'll put the audio clip on there and that good stuff.
Okay.
And if we get any updates, if I see an
Yeah.
update, I will, of course, then say it on the
Did you set
podcast.
a Google alert for it?
No, but I need to. I need to for the Texas military stuff that I was talking about.
Yeah.
I've looked trying to find new stats, and I can't find stats like I found before.
Huh.
On the rates that were happening, because, you know, they're improving, right?
Right.
So I couldn't find anything new on that. I have searched for that recently, though. You know, just to go, every once in a while, I'm like, I'm going to go check on something if it's an open case. Because there have been a lot of breaks in a lot of cases recently, and
Yeah.
including why I want to do John Wayne Gacy soon is because they have identified one of his unidentified victims.
Oh.
And, you know,
Wow. That's a lot. That is kind of chilling.
there's it's like extra disturbing to me, because these were smart girls.
Right.
And they've called Libby a hero, basically, because they're like, when we have the right person in there, her video is going to get that person. So she will have caught her own killer,
Oh.
you know? But Also disturbing to me is that they won't release these details and what the affidavit implied about the brutality and staging. And they say, here was something else they said, and I'm like, how would you know this? But they said, most likely, the way they were staged, the person probably will have photographs that they took of it, of the scene. So I'm assuming that's because they did bring in FBI profilers and stuff like that. So possibly that comes from a profiler. But yeah, because that affidavit was within days.
Because how can you look at a scene and go, somebody
photographed this?
Because there is,
unless there's Polaroids,
right?
Strewn about
canister.
That's right.
Which nobody uses
and no,
anymore.
They would have used a phone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and they did they've done the searching for phones and pinging what phones pinged in this area during this time and stuff like that. The thing is, the family isn't out there saying this. The police suck. Like, they can tell the police, and this is not a cold case. They have been actively working this case for 5 years. Oh my God. I tried to listen to. I made it, I think, 5 minutes in before I stopped. Have you ever listened to a Nancy Grace report?
No, I've seen blurbs of her.
Oh my God. So I tried to listen to a podcast she'd done covering it, because I was like, she might have some She is so alarmist and so dramatic. And she fucking yells the whole time.
Oh no, I couldn't listen to that.
And she opens, and I'm like, you're supposed to be giving us information, but she opens with yelling, how have the police not solved a video? They were handed that wrapped on a platter, and I was like, oh my God, do you stop yelling? And so again, maybe 5 minutes in, and I couldn't, I was so,
wow.
It got me in a deep, dark, sensory way, listening to this woman literally yell.
That's crazy.
The whole time. And it was so, everything she said was so blown up, and I'm like, oh, that's how you journalist, right? That's how you actually become a media personality, to be this.
I would say she's not a journalist. That's how you become, but that is how you become a media personality.
Yeah. Just so blown up. Just so, I can't even put into words how I felt trying to listen to that. But hey, if you like Nancy Grace, there's one out there that you can listen to by her.
I have noticed it takes a while, unless it's egregious. It really does take a while. It's not in the first 5 years that the family goes, what the fuck is wrong with the police? It takes a while before they get to that point, and all of a sudden they're like, and I'm not going to give a year mark. I'm just using this as an example. It's like all of a sudden they hit the 10-year mark, and they're like, that's when they go, why don't we know any more now than we did?
Well, and I think also that benefit of it being a small town is, again, every time they've served a warrant, every time they've done a new search, for fuck's sake, everybody sees the police in the river, and they're like, oh, hey. That's the Klein property,
Yep, and they're working on it.
And so they know that they're actively working on it. And the sheriff, Lazenby, that I had mentioned before, his whole thing was, I don't want to retire until I have found this killer. He's just absolutely determined to find the killer.
Good.
But as a sheriff, it's not retire, right? It's election. So I don't even know if he's still the sheriff. I did not bother looking that up. But, and the head of the Indiana State Patrol, for example, they're involved, and they are just determined that
good.
None of them want to give this up. So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit different perspective. I had to look up how to pronounce the name of this town because I've only seen it written. I obviously don't know anybody from there. I don't know that I know anybody from there. So this is Chillicothe, Ohio. This is in the south central part of the state. It's about 50 miles south of Columbus. According to the Goog, the population is a little under 22,000. So bigger place than...
Yeah.
But it used...
By 7 times bigger.
Yes. And the name comes from a Shawnee term that means principal town. I don't know why I felt I needed to include that, but there you go. Because I wanted to look up what this town was all about. It really was one of those ideal locations because it's got access to the Mississippi River, the Ohio and Erie Canal. It was the convergence of several railway lines, and it went from being agricultural to industrial.
Makes sense.
But then the canal closed. The army base, which was Camp Sherman, was decommissioned. The railway was rerouted. This was the typical, you see this story over and over again. You have this boom town, And then, or you see the freeway goes in and everybody's going by instead of through. So it shrank. It was a much bigger town. It shrank to 22,000. So it has, over the past, struggled to survive. And there's a lot of publicity about, we are going to reimagine our town. We want input from the citizens. That's a big push they've got going on right now. What do the citizens want? What do you want to see? What are your ideas for, reimagining this town? None of these plans mention the 6 women who went missing. So I will say at the outset, no, I'm not going to say it at the outset. I'm going to say it for later. So the first to go missing was Charlotte Eliza Trago, who was the youngest daughter of Yvonne Boggs. She was an adventurous, outdoorsy girl who took it very hard when her father died of cancer in 2002. So after her father died, she became very quiet, very withdrawn, and her grades started to drop.
And what did you say how old she was?
I did not.
Are we talking teen or early 20s?
Teen.
Okay.
She was like 15. Her mother knew she was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and she was getting involved with drugs. So she had a baby girl, Chloe, at the age of 16. So I think she was 14 or so when her dad passed. Now, she had this baby girl at the age of 16, and the father did want to marry Charlotte, but her mother wouldn't allow it because he was like the same age. He was 16 or 17, and he was hardcore into drugs. And her brother was just like, no, I will help you with this, but we're not gonna double down on the mistake.
Right. Make this.
I'm not saying having a baby is a mistake. It wasn't in her plans. I hope you all get where I'm going with this. So,
how dare you?
On May 3rd of 2014, Yvonne took Charlotte and Chloe, her daughter and her granddaughter, out to dinner. Charlotte was in a good mood. She seemed very happy. She said she had a date later. So Chloe went home with her grandma, and Yvonne spoke to her daughter on the phone later that night. She indicated the date hadn't gone well, but she didn't want to talk about it. It didn't seem like it was horrible or anything. It just, we've all had a bad date.
He picked his nose at the table.
Whatever. She asked her mother to help her get into rehab again. I do at this point want to point out that there are 6 missing women. 6 women went missing. Some of them had parents who were more articulate, perhaps more willing or more able or more willing to go into the public eye to publicize the case. Mm-hmm. So, a little bit more about some of these women. They're not all young. Some of them one was a grandmother. Huh? I mean, she was a young grandmother, but there are just more details about the girls and it was almost universally their mothers, who were willing to talk to the public, who were willing to talk to the press. And so I don't want to short the women who I don't have as many details about.
Right. But that's also frequently.
Right.
It's common.
So, yes, her mother is saying, oh, no, she was wanting to get back into rehab, and I hope that she was. So she called the police. Yvonne called the police the next day when she didn't hear from Charlotte, because apparently they talked on the phone every day. So the investigating officer came back and said, well, Charlotte was in an argument with her roommate and walked off. So it wasn't until May 18th that she was officially reported as missing. Mm-hmm. Because she'd been in trouble and, So one of her best friends, Tamika Lynch, went missing shortly after that.
Really?
Yes. She was last seen walking down the street on May 19th, and her husband reported her missing on May 20th, which was approximately 4 days after the last time he had seen her. So I'm like, what was the disconnect there?
Her friend was older and married or young and married?
Young and married.
Okay.
I don't think she was 16, but she was young enough and married. Her body was found in a creek roughly a week after she went missing. The official line, so this is weird. The official line, the coroner said that Tamika died of an overdose. She had cocaine, alcohol, and amphetamines in her system. Her mother said she would never in a million years have gone to this place. She was scared of the woods and she was scared of the water. So there's no way she would have been tripping down the riverbank in the middle of the night by herself. She also said her daughter had turned to drugs Not that she hadn't been on drugs before, but she had gotten clean, and then she got a lupus diagnosis.
Okay.
Which triggered her going back to the drugs.
Right, a setback.
However, the police, even though the coroner ruled it an overdose, the police later decided to include this case in the larger case. On November 3rd of 2014, Wanda Lemons went missing, last seen by her mother. She was the 37-year-old mother of 5. She was the one who was grandmother. So I think 37 is a young grandmother.
Yeah.
A friend, I don't know where this came from, but a friend reported, I heard she went to Galveston with a truck driver. But she has not been heard from since. She's totally fallen off the planet. While her family says it wasn't uncommon for her to be out of touch for longer periods of time, they said she never missed the holidays. Either she was there or she was in contact at the holidays. Because she did have children and she kept in contact with them and just poof, disappeared. The search for, you'll see why, Shasta, her middle name, her first name, the search for Shasta Himmelrich began when her car was found on December 26th of 2014. It was sitting on a bridge, doors wide open, gas tank is empty, and the battery is dead. There was no sign of Himmelrich anywhere. 1 week later, her body turned up in the, I did not look up how to pronounce this, Scioto River? It's Scioto.
Okay.
So that's my best guess. Suspicion centered on her boyfriend, Michael O's, but his alibi, he didn't do it.
Okay.
The first thing they said was he passed a polygraph, and you know how reliable those are. However, there were witnesses, and there were phone records, and there was actually a surveillance camera took a photo of her. I think she got money out of an ATM. So they have that surveillance footage from the ATM of her alone at 3:13 a.m. So there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that says she wasn't with her boyfriend. Her death, once her body was found, her death was also ruled a suicide, but her friends and family don't agree. She was pregnant at the time of her death and by all accounts was very excited about the pregnancy. She'd been struggling with drugs and had both oxycodone and cocaine in her system when she died, but not enough to kill her. Because there were no signs of a struggle, the coroner ruled it a suicide. Because of the date and the proximity to the other missing women, the police considered it part of the same case.
That's good that they went again. I mean, at least the more you, although it can hold you back if it's not, right? But the whole there's no sign of a struggle thing is always tricky because I'm like, if they held a gun on you, so there wouldn't be a sign of a struggle necessarily.
So all of these were in 2014. Tiffany Sayre went missing on May 11th, 2015. She had been, air quote, doing business at a local motel and left to run an errand. She had planned to come back and continue working. And this is, I don't mean she was changing the sheets. She was selling her body to earn money for drugs. But she never showed up. Kenneth Buell was her ex-boyfriend and the father of her 2 children. And he admitted that while they had done heroin and crack together, he said they split up because he was able to kick the habit and she was not. Her sister said she had found a new boyfriend and was trying to go straight again, but then he died and that sent her spiraling back to drugs. His death, I believe, was not any kind of a violent death. It sounded like, I'm not saying it wasn't drug related, but it wasn't like he was shot. He had an aneurysm or a heart attack, or I can't remember what it was, but it was something like that killed him. Approximately 2 months after Sayre went missing, her naked body was discovered by hikers in a drainage ditch. Her body had been wrapped in a white sheet, which is how the hikers spotted her, because she was kind of down like in the drainage tunnel. Her head had been wrapped with duct tape. The coroner found morphine, cocaine, amphetamines, and Dilaudid in her bloodstream. And Dilaudid is a big-time sedative. So her body had also been mostly drained of blood. Interestingly, they didn't say how.
They rarely do.
Right. But I mean, it wasn't like she had been wounded and bled out.
Yeah.
They just didn't. But because of, here was another interesting, totally morbid but interesting fact. Because of factors in the decomposition of her body, authorities believe the body may have been stored indoors for some period of time before being placed in the creek.
Gotcha.
The discovery of Sayre's body, remember, this is May of 2015, so this is like a year after the first girl goes missing. The discovery of Sayre's body was the tipping point that finally launched a task force to look into the murders and disappearances. They got an FBI analyst involved, and they started to consider whether or not they were looking at a serial killer. There's one more girl, Timberly Clater, disappeared on May 28th of 2015. She was last seen on a security camera at a local gas station where she's seen getting into a car, which then drives off. Her nude body was found 2 days later outside the abandoned building. She had been shot 3 times. In her case, Jason McCrary was charged with and convicted of her murder in 2016. Witnesses said he killed her after she consumed the last of the drugs that they were sharing at the time. McCrary claims that, I don't know if you've ever heard this name, Ernest Dollar Bill Moore was with them at the time and was the person who pulled the trigger. So McCrary died in prison at the age of 44 just earlier this year, but I could not find that they had released the cause of death. I'm not sorry he's gone.
Right.
But, yeah.
Nobody's losing too much sleep over it.
No. Now, Dollar Bill, who was apparently there with them, had other problems. Here's why I thought you might have heard of him. He was convicted in 2016 on charges of kidnapping and torture and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. In 2017, he was convicted of trafficking heroin, and they believe that Dollar Bill knew all of the women who went missing because he was part of the drug scene, but he was never officially a suspect or even a person of interest. They went to some pains to make it clear that they didn't think he did it. For a time, the police tried to make a connection between the women and convicted serial rapist and serial killer Anthony Sowell. I don't know if that name... Yeah, I'm looking at Shannon because I'm like, you know all of the serial killers.
Oh my God.
The remains of 11 of his victims were found hidden in and around his home in Mount Pleasant, Ohio. He died in 2021 at the age of 61 in prison. They were never able to make... They wanted to blame these missing women on him, but they were never able to. Mm-hmm. They were never able to really make a connection. There's another suspected serial killer, Neil Falls, who was killed in Charleston, West Virginia. I don't know, I didn't read up on him because at that point I was like, no, he's not part of this. So, but the only reason they were trying to connect this all together was because he was killed in Charleston, West Virginia, which is a 2-hour drive from Chillicothe.
Okay.
And I was like, so that's it? He could have driven there? That's the reason. So 2 of these women, the very first one, Charlotte Trago and Wanda Lemons, bodies have never been found. They went missing and were never heard from again. 4 other women, bodies were found. One of them they have a killer for. But it's still ongoing. The only thing that connects all of the women, they were all connected by drug use. Because apparently when this town went downhill, it went to shit fast.
But they tend to. And then there's the heavy drug use. And then there's,
They were possibly all involved in sex work to pay for their drug habits. And some of them, it was, of course, a mother is not going to say, yes, I'm pretty sure my daughter was turning tricks to support her drug habit. Let me rephrase that. Most mothers would not want to say that to the press.
Right.
That's just, and sometimes those comments come from other family members.
And Charlotte's the only one who had any sort of date set up?
Yes.
Okay.
Interestingly, they all went to they had all cycled through the same rehab. Mm-hmm. That whatever was and I don't have the name of it, but it was whatever was the closest. They had all been there. So they were like, is that the connection? And they have investigated this and can't find anything. So 4 of these women were killed and nobody knows what happened to them.
Yeah.
A little bit different than searching every year and coming up and disposing of suspects. Some of these parents are getting fed up because they're like, it's like, I know my child was not an angel, but that doesn't mean she deserved to die for what happened to her, for what she was doing.
Right. I get that these were drug users, but that doesn't make their murders any more okay. Yeah.
And they're referred to as the Chillicothe 6. Now, there are other in the surrounding area, there were other murders that may or may not be included.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't include them because of the distance they were away. Some of them were in Columbus, Ohio, which was 50 miles away. But there were a couple of murders that are murdered. And I was like, I don't know. There wasn't anything I saw that could positively connect it.
Yeah.
There was another one where the woman was found. Oh my God, they thought her body was a Halloween decoration. Because it was in October.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it was at a power plant, so these guys come in to go to work, and they see something hanging on the fence.
Oh, God.
And they thought it was a Halloween decoration, and then they went out to take it off the fence, and hello, dead body.
It was a human.
Yes. I believe they know who did that one.
Okay.
Because I did read...
Was it Mike Myers?
It was not.
No.
I read into it a little bit, but then I didn't think it was related to these 6 women. It was I don't know if he's an ex-husband or an ex-boyfriend whose sister turned him in and then later said, oh, no, I was just kidding. He came to my house in bloody clothes and showered and changed clothes. The dead woman's blood was found on the, whatever he wiped off with and on the clothes, which she tried to throw away in a neighbor's garbage can. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was like, no, that's not the same thing.
No.
No. That's no the same.
Jeez.
But it still amazes me in this. I mean, this wasn't that long ago. It wasn't like it was yesterday, but that people can just flat out go missing.
Yeah. Here's the problem when you're looking into something serial killer or not a serial killer. Like, they all were in the drug scene and stuff like that, but were they killed the same way?
One of the reasons why they linked it was because the bodies that were found in water.
In water.
They had been put in water.
But one had been kept for a time period and
before she was
exsanguinated.
In some fashion.
Yeah. So, it could be different. I mean, there's a lot of water in Ohio, right?
I believe so.
I think so.
I no longer want to move there. But not like
Did you want to before?
No, but I'm like, I want to move a place where there is water.
So. Yeah. Maybe people are crazy around water. You don't know.
I can live with a certain amount of crazy. Perhaps not this amount.
Not this amount. Yeah, no. Don't.
No.
Yeah. So... But that is the problem, right? I think that's why they hesitate to say serial killer. Also because then people are like, oh my God! Like, it wasn't freaky that just random people were killing random people to begin with.
Right.
But it's not so random anymore. That's more scary.
And the other thing that made them lean in that direction was because it's not uncommon for serial killers to attack people on the fringes of society.
Right. Because they're the ones who've thought it through. It's not a crime of passion.
Yes.
It's, well, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to go look for a victim. She's going to be like, whatever appeals to me. And yeah. So, all right, guys. Thanks for listening.
We'll be back next week with something equally morbid and yet interesting.
And bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.